Hi everyone, this is Heidi.
And I'm Franny.
And welcome back to our 911 3.2 Carrera project car.
Woohoo!
I want to wish you a happy new year and tell you that we are super excited about what's coming up. So we're going to talk to you about 4 different areas. The first area is the plating.
So we have a bunch of parts behind us. I'll show you, run you through all those. All these parts have to be sent off to the plater.
The next area is the injectors.
Right, and so we send those off to get them checked and cleaned.
And then after that, we have to ceramic coat and powder coat.
Right, so we have tin and exhaust bits, and we'll show you all that.
And last of all is the parts.
Right, so we have a bunch of replacement parts as well, and that takes a lot of research and a lot of time. So I'm going to run you through all that as well.
So stay with us. We're going to go through in more detail and let you know what's going on.
We've had a lot of questions about how we organize all the parts we took off the engine. So what I did was bag them up into sort of assembly groups when I took them off. And then down here on the table, you can see I've laid them all out. So there's a couple of reasons for this. One, we want to make sure we have all the bits. And 2, we want to see the condition of all the parts as well. Which ones are really going to be a problem? Like this plastic stuff on here needs to be replaced. It's all breaking and falling off. Things like that. So we want to evaluate the condition of the parts as well. But also, we want to have a visual record. When these things come back from the plater, I'm assuming this whole bit is just going to be jumbled into a big, huge box or something. And I'm gonna have to go back out and take a look and resort all of these parts. I've got my little ruler here so I can make some notes. All right, so there's parts we can't send off as well. And this motor assembly is a great example of that. You can see inside here we have a couple of issues. We have the fixed pole magnets for the motor, but then in the back is the bearing, the bushing for this thing. And when I talked to them about that, they're like, yeah, we can't really do that because we submerged the entire part in acid, so that's a problem. You can see a lot of the plating's gone on this. It sits way forward in the engine, so you can't really see it. If I really wanted to spruce it up, there's a great paint I can use that kind of mimics this coating. So I might end up doing that. You want to kind of be aware of what they can plate and what they can't plate. So something like this, a simple bracket, you probably take the little bolt off, and that's fine. They can plate that all day long. But anything with any plastic or rubber in it, you're going to have to remove all of that first. All right, so moving down the line here, we've got the rest of the assemblies. This was from the intake manifold here. Then we've got some exhaust parts here. And this is a bit of what I was talking about. Look at our exhaust bolts. These things are bad. We did get most of this off, but we pulled a few studs out. This is pretty well fused to the stud. So looking at this, we're going to replace these 2 studs. Obviously, this guy's trash. And all of this is a little too rusty. I'll send it off and see how it turns out. They might be able to get some of this off, but I think I'm going to end up ordering those new as well. We've got our clamps up here that all need to be cleaned, bits here. Just moving through all of these assemblies here. And then moving on to some of these other parts here. We can't really send this off to the plater. We can send the bracket, but this part we can't, because once again, they can't submerge that in acid. So that's an issue. Same thing goes for our cold running bypass valve here. The same problem there. For our fuel rails here, these can easily be sent off. There's no rubber bits, no plastic on these things at all. And we talked to them about that, and they can easily replate these. You want to take a look at some of these junction here for the bracket and make sure it's not badly rusted or coming off or the welds are breaking. These look really, really good. I'd have to say for our engine, the condition of the parts is actually quite good. That's super awesome. I mean, all of these parts, they're a little rusted, but look at that. These are the intake cap nuts here. And take a look, you can even see a good bit of plating still on there. So these are all in very good condition, actually. Obviously need a little bit of love, but they look really good. All right, so we're gonna box these things up and we'll put them back in their bags and we'll send them off so that hopefully they can do them in groups. And if they can do them in groups and put them back in the bags, then that will be super awesome. I can lay them back out and I'll have a much better sense of where things go when they come back. If it's a big jumbled mess, it'll be a thing. So we'll let you know exactly how it looks when all of these parts come back. But hopefully they're going to be all bright and shiny and just look great.
The next part of the engine are the injectors. And We are looking at a couple of companies right now. We haven't made a decision. How these companies work is they receive all of the injectors in and they put them in a test piece of equipment because they want to start out with a baseline. They want to know what kind of shape these injectors are in. Now, obviously you can see they're quite dirty. They're all over my fingers. They need to have some refurbishing done, maybe some painting on them. I mean, there's like rust and dirt and all sorts of stuff. These are probably the original injectors, so they're 30-something-year-old rubber on it, and you can see that they're not real soft and pliable anymore. And then also there is electrical, so any kind of the electrical connections are going to need to be cleaned and dealt with as well. So they will go ahead and they will clean everything up, they will put them back in their test piece of equipment, and hopefully everything will be much more balanced when we get it back. Some of these companies will even get you video of the before and after, which is really cool.
Next, let's go over all the parts that are going to be coated. Now, what we have out here are all the exhaust parts, and they're going to be ceramic coated. So we've got our catalytic converter, cross pipe. We have a big shroud that goes on the catalytic converter. This is actually heating tubing here. We have our heat exchangers here and here, and then our muffler over here. So you can see these parts look kind of bad. Look at this thing. It's really rusted and looks pretty bad, huh? I mean, they've obviously been on the car since the car was new, but what the place will do is they'll go ahead and bead blast these things, and when they ceramic coat them, they'll pretty much look brand new when they're done with them. So that's gonna be great. I can't wait to see these things when they come back. But we were going through all of these parts and doing a full inspection on them. Like I said, that's a really good idea to do. And we found a bit of an issue. Let me show you with the muffler. All right, so look at this. We've got a big hole in our muffler. This is just no good right here. And the rest of the muffler actually looks really good, doesn't it? I mean, a little bit of surface rust here and there, but not that bad. So here's the thing about mufflers. They pretty much rust from the inside out because of all the water vapor that comes out of the engine tends to condense inside the muffler, and if it doesn't get hot enough, it can just sort of sit in there and rust it from the inside out. So it looks like that's what's going on with this, and instead of sending the whole muffler down to get that thing done, I think what we're going to end up doing is, I hate to say it, we're probably going to have to replace the thing because I don't think you can really fix that. And the other thing is that even if you could put a patch over it and maybe weld a little bit on it, if it's coming through there, it's almost coming through in a lot of other places as well. So I think that's going to be something we're just going to have to bite the bullet and replace. All right, well, let me go ahead and clear the table here, and I'll show you all the other bits, the tin and stuff that's going to get powder coated. So a lot of this is tin, but there's some other parts. This is on the front of the car here, that's part of the engine mount. This piece here is a huge plate that's actually under the front of the car that just needs a little love there, huh? So these parts are in pretty good shape. I mean, for the age of this car, look at this. This is amazing. And it's really great to find a spot like this because this looks like it's very original. You can look at the color and the sheen, most importantly, on this. And so when we take this to the powder coaters, I want them to just replicate this sheen. It looks great. Very few of these parts are really badly rusted. We do have a little bit of rust over here where the paint has come up in a couple of places. This is one of the side tins. So we're definitely, going to get these all sorted here. And there you go. There's some rust on the back of that. See that? And there's another spot there. They definitely need to be protected a bit. So I think the powder coating's going to be great. These parts will look brand new when they come back. And there's no real need to do a heavy cleaning on any of them because they've got to bead blast all the old paint off anyway, so I'm not going to waste a bunch of time cleaning them. And finally, we have all the replacement parts that we're going to have to get for the engine. Now, when you do want the work on these cars, take the intake off and the exhaust off, you're in it for a dead set of parts anyways. But while you're in there, and this is a car from 1986, so a lot of these parts are pretty old. So you're looking through the whole engine, looking for anything that you think needs to be replaced and hasn't been replaced since new. So let me run you through a few of the bits here. These are exhaust gaskets as well, so off the exhaust manifold. So we're definitely going to be into replacing those. These bits off of here are all the downpipe and the catalytic converter connections and all that. So definitely going to be replacing all these, all rusted and yucky. Now here's a kind of an interesting thing. This is a bracket that's used to hold the cover that goes over the catalytic converter. And you can see on this end here that it's broken right here. It should look just like this, and you can see this side is cracked and broken off. So these are parts that I have to find and source, and they're actually quite difficult to find. This is kind of an older car. I dig through the parts manuals for this, find the actual, 930 dot blah 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 part numbers for these things, and then search for them. And I was able to find this in a couple of locations, so that's pretty sweet, but something we're gonna have to replace. Of course, we're in it for all of these sorts of things, right? So this is one of the exhaust studs and one of the cap nuts that's all rusted. I'm not gonna bother to pull this apart. It's ridiculous. Plus, I have to replace all these cap nuts anyways. These parts aren't expensive, so they're like $6 or something. So I'll just go ahead and replace these, that sort of thing. We have nuts that are all chewed up, same sort of thing here. We have a few kind of weird bolts that I had to cut a bunch of these off to get the tin and stuff off of the car. So I'm gonna have to source a bunch of these, but it's nice to have at least one original so you know what the thread size is and what size the washer is and all that. That's really pretty sweet. These are a bunch of those capture nuts, I guess they call them, or blind nuts. These things, boy, so most of these were destroyed. I'm gonna have to replace those. All of our bolts holding the exhaust system together, I cut most of these. These are gaskets for the intake manifold plus a spacer. I'll need to take a look at these fits a bit more carefully, but taking a look at them, we're going to be replacing at least the gaskets, right? Because why would you put that back on, right? But then these spacers need to be perfectly flat. So if I can't guarantee that these things are nice and flat and have no warp to them or whatever, I'll have to replace these as well. I'll do a good inspection on them, but I'd rather not. Just if they're fine, there's no need to actually replace them. All right, moving on to things like this. These guys are sensors. So these are position and speed sensors that actually read notches on the flywheel. And then this little guy, this third guy, is a temperature sensor that screws into one of the cylinders just so that the computer has a good idea what the actual temperature of the engine is. Now these are expensive, but here's the problem. Check this out. So the coating, look at this, just coming right off. This was the shroud that was around the wire, and it should be black. Shouldn't be silver like this. So I can't really, in good conscience, put these things back on. I believe they're functioning properly, but I don't know. But the problem with these guys is they're kind of expensive. They're about $170 a pop, and I need 2 of them. So that's a thing. This guy, this little temperature sensor guy, close to $250. And why is it so expensive? It's stupid, right? This thing should be like a $40 part. Well, they're bespoke to the car, and it's a 30-year-old car. So you're gonna find this wild variance in the price of things. And this one has a single connection on the connector here. The new ones, or the ones I'd replace this with, actually have 2 connectors, so it's slightly upgraded part, I suppose. So you can kind of maybe console yourself a little bit in that. You're getting a better part. At any rate, moving on, we've got other pieces here. I refurbished this in an earlier episode. I'll go ahead and link that up above. This is a bypass valve for the fuel injection system. If I can find one that I know is in good shape, or a new one and it's not too expensive, I'd love to replace this guy because it was locked up on our car, and who knows how long it was locked up for. So sounds like it's loose. Sounds like it's still working. Don't really know.
I want to talk about that sensor real quick, and that is that while you have the engine out, how much easier it is to replace it than like a month after you get your car put back together.
Right.
And all of a sudden it decides to go bad. So it is $250.
Yes. Well, that's a good point, because these parts are very hard to replace when the engine's in the car. This one especially is very difficult to get to. It's next to the flywheel, up against the forward part of the car, up against the firewall up there. Very, very difficult to get out. There's other parts here. This is a little fuel bypass valve. This is a vacuum line here, gas lines here. And when I pulled this off, a little bit of goo came out of it, and that bothered me. So I'm going to take a look at this, and I'm going to test it and make sure it's working properly. If not, it's actually a little bit difficult to find. But if I can find a good working unit, then maybe I'll just replace it. We'll see. Okay, so now we come to the worst part of all of this, and that is the fuel lines. So this car has 3 fuel lines in it, 3 different fuel lines. We can see one, this little guy here, this one, and this one. So let's take this one for instance. So this guy here, what do we got? We got just a little piece of rubber tubing, yes, and then this guy here, right? No big deal. How much do you think this thing costs? It costs like $25, right? Yeah, just a little bit up. So maybe 45. Just keep going, keep going. 65. Okay, north of 100. Woo! what? This thing is like $170 from Porsche. And so you can see it's starting to crack down there as well. There's no chance I'm putting this guy back on. There's no way.
Safety is key here,
right.
Especially the fuel lines.
So you have a few options with this. You can get the rubber replaced in this, and then they can just basically rebuild these things for you. I guess, I don't know. I've heard that kind of works, but then they can also leak after that as well if they didn't get this swaged perfectly on those things again. Taking a look at this one, we can see this one's actually got even a different type of fuel line on it. It's got a covering over it, so that's a thing. And then these things have special bins in them, and it's certainly not something that I would want to put back on the car. This guy here, take a look at this thing. This is a mess, huh? So we've got a steel line here. We've got two lines that are going out. This thing is over $500 from Porsche. And there are a couple of aftermarket manufacturers for it as well, but I really need this to not leak. I really need it not to leak and break where it's been brazed. I need it to be a very high quality part, I guess is my point. I don't know, I could replace all of this with steel braided lines, but they won't look like this. They won't act like this. And, you know, frankly, I think this is one place where I don't want to skimp. I want to get the correct part for the car, because the last thing I want is any type of leaks for fires. So these are going to be very expensive. These fuel lines are going to be crazy expensive. When I went through working on the car, I made notes of everything as I went along. I've got starter mount cap nuts here. I've got CV boots, CV cap bolts were bad. And I was like, oh, that's right, those were bad. Somebody stripped them out. They used the wrong tool. Exhaust bolts, broken exhaust bracket. That's this guy. So there's all sorts of things, rubber grommets and the alternator, blah, 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 blah. So it's really a great idea to make notes as you're taking things apart, and you pull something off and it doesn't look right, you write it down, because you just will not remember later. So I've got a full set of notes. I'm going to then transfer them onto like an Excel sheet and stuff. So I've got all them, and we'll put together a full order. All right, well, that's pretty much it. That's the fourth bit here. So the parts and all the other stuff, it's going to be a lot of work to get this stuff together. Once we get all the parts back and things, we can start reassembling the engine. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and subscribe now and hit the little bell next to it to be notified, because you're not going to want to miss any of this content. And we have other cars we're working on as well. Oh, and I wanted to remind you, so these crazy shirts that we've got on, these ridiculous shirts. Those of you who are fans of Nick Murray will recognize these right off, but these are great fun. And Nick sells a bunch of crazy t-shirts and things on his website for his channel, and he donates the proceeds to animal charities. So it's a really good charity to donate to. So if you like these shirts, go over to his site. I'll put a link at the end there, and you can go to his site and order yourself some shirts, because they're really fun. All right, well, thank you so much for watching, and as always, a special thank you to our Patreon supporters. Until next time, safe travels. Bye.